approximately 6:35 Tuesday, May 11th, 2021. This meeting is being shown virtually via Zoom webinar. It is also available by dialing in and can be watched on Cheshire's Channel 14. The public hearing subject matter this evening is the proposed fiscal year 21-22 annual capital expenditure budget. We will have an explanation of the hearing procedure and agenda and work through a reading of the legal notice, a presentation of the hearing subject matter, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments from members of the public. So with that, if we can have a roll call, please, Ms. Milton. Ms. Milton, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Orris,
Here.
Mr. Slocum,
Here.
Mr. Burway,
Present.
Mr. Jinks,
Here.
Ms. Nichols,
Here.
Ms. Pavano,
Here.
Mr. Talbot, Mr. Veliber,
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
We have a quorum of the council present.
Thank you, Ms. Milton. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, again, thank you for being here tonight. I did a quick explanation of the hearing procedure and our agenda. At this point, I would ask Ms. Milton to read the legal notice.
Notice of public hearing, Town of Cheshire, Town Council fiscal year 2021-2022 annual capital expenditure budget pursuant to section 7-2, 7-3, and 7-4 of the Charter of the Town of Cheshire, Connecticut. The Cheshire Town Council and the Water Pollution Authority will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Access will be either virtual or in person, and details will be noticed by May 5th, 2021. Electors and other persons qualified to vote in Cheshire will be given an opportunity to comment on the following proposed appropriations for the capital expenditure budget of the town of Cheshire for the 2021-22 fiscal year and the issuance of bonds, notes, and temporary notes to finance certain appropriations within said budget. Public comments can be submitted at comments@cheshirect.org and by voicemail 203-271-6638. Recorded video will be available on YouTube, Cheshire Channel 14. The totals for the budget: proposed appropriation, $15,170,000. Amount to be bonded, $14,073,000. Robert J. Orris Jr., Chairman, Cheshire Town Council, dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 14th day of April, 2021.
Thank you very much, Ms. Milton. With that, we will move on to a presentation of the hearing subject matter. And with that, I would like to turn it over and introduce our budget chair, Mr. David Bowery, and our town manager, Mr. Sean Kimball. Mr. Bowery.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee has received, and the full council has been attending all of the Budget Committee workshops where we have reviewed the operating budget and beginning to review the capital budget. We have recognized that the large item within the capital budget is what may happen with school modernization, and therefore to spend a lot of time early on doing the two budgets simultaneous probably didn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're just getting to the capital budget now. The deadline would be around the 1st of September in order to have the 60 days before the election. If any questions were to be prepared for the November ballot, that would be going out to the citizens. And I think the council is planning on working diligently during the remaining 3 months before that deadline. And quite frankly, if things are not ready, they won't be put out to vote. We will be working on getting documents for questions that we may still have answered, need to be answered, not only on the school modernization, but on the other projects that are in the capital budget. And I think they all need to be put together as a piece and as a total package. We can't look at one individual item and say, well, this is all that we want to do, no matter what happens with the others. They all go together. What we do with the parks and what we do with Bartlett matters, and when it is in the plan. What we do with roads matter, and when they're in the plan. What we do with other items that have to be in the capital budget with sewers and other items all matter to each other, even though individually they may look like they're items that can be justified on their own. So it's a matter of continuing to work to get more information. The Budget Committee earlier made a recommendation to the full council for the meeting to follow this public hearing, that additional funds be available for the Collier's consultants that SFC use, because the council will have more questions and numbers and information that'll have to be run in order to work on that item in the capital budget, but the other items all do meld together and work together. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the town manager if he has some comments he'd like to make.
All right, thank you, David. I will, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen for a brief presentation overview of the capital budget. I have about 10 slides. I'll go through them really quickly, really just hitting the highlights of the budget, and then we'll open it up to our members of the public who are here to speak directly to the council. So with that, I'll just dive right in, sharing the screen. There we go. All right, so tonight we'll be presenting the capital budget for fiscal 21-22. Again, as Mr. Borwe said, historically, we review this in the summer and it's approved by the end of August or September 1st timeframe for a November referendum. This year and last year, actually, for the first time, we presented both budgets at the same time, the operating and the capital budget. But again, as we've discussed, we're not going to be adopting it at the same time frame, and we'll be taking it up this next few months and over the summer. The full 5-year capital plan is just that. It's a 5-year plan for capital expenditures, but only the first year is what's officially adopted and appropriated and therefore approved for construction or purchase is the first year of the budget each year, which is what we'll be focusing on tonight. Again, the prioritization that I took a look when the proposed projects came to me, I prioritized projects that had been in the previously adopted 5-year capital expenditure plan from prior years, meaning again, they've worked their way up as we try to carefully plan our expenditures over those 5 years responsibly. Also prioritizing any new projects that would lead to future cost savings and returns on investment. And then again, as just previously mentioned, recommended projects that will not conflict with future school modernization plans. The total requests from departments and the Board of Ed totaled $92,233,000 over those 5 years. This amount was reduced, I reduced this amount by $8.8 million for a total recommended 5-year plan of $83,418,000. This does represent an increase of just under $16 million over last year's 5-year adopted plan. It's important to note there are offsetting grants or available ongoing cash funding that would offset this amount that wouldn't need to be bonded by $10,676,000, which reduced that net capital cost that would be bonded to $72,742,000. Adopted 5-year capital expenditure plans have averaged $56 million gross and about $48 million net over the last 5 years. And you'll see those prior adopted budgets in the last 10 years here for comparison's sake. And again, the first fiscal 22 annual, the first year, the fiscal 22 annual capital budget is the one we're here to talk about tonight. Again, those projects totaled $15,170,000 in the proposed annual capital budget, which is an increase of $9 million over last year's adopted budget. Use of offsetting grants and capital non-recurring cash would reduce that by just over $1 million. And so I'll just now list off the projects that make up the annual capital budget as proposed. In the finance and technology category, it's state mandated every 5 years we do a property revaluation, and that costs about $550,000. There's a technology reserve fund replacement equipment request for $350,000. This is one of the items that's eligible for E-rate funding reimbursement, so not that full amount would need to be financed in another way. We'd have some reimbursement funding coming. Our general services area, which is kind of a cross-departmental item, vehicles and equipment replacement funds. This includes police cars, one fire SUV, and also a public works SUV, totaling $252,000. various town building improvements at $75,000, roof replacements at the police station, $225,000, various roof replacements, including firehouse and town hall at $180,000, and paving of the parking lot next to the town library at $120,000. Public safety items include firefighting equipment and protective clothing at $145,000 and an emergency portable generator at $190,000. In the Public Works Department, Industrial Avenue Culvert Bridge replacement, $860,000. Tree removals, $150,000. Public Works dump truck with a plow, $263,000. A Public Works non-dump truck equipment at $205,000. The annual road improvement program recommended at $2 million. Sidewalk improvement program, $250,000. A proposal for sidewalk extensions on Cheshire Street to Quinnipiac Park for $170,000. Road drainage improvements on Roslyn Drive and Farmington Drive, $145,000. Public Works Division Water Pollution Control, a generator for water pollution control at $150,000. And then the Recreation and Leisure Services Department, Mixville Park Pavilion Indoor Section proposal for $295,000. And the development of the Chapman property, phase 1 of the Bartlett South Chapman property at $5.9 million. And finally, Education Department, a variety of items, roof replacements at Dodd and Cheshire High School at $750,000 and $100,000. Cafeteria renovations for Norton Elementary School at $175,000. Loading dock, drainage, and refrigeration for $50,000 at CHS. Window replacements at Cheshire High School for $500,000. District lavatory improvements, $250,000. District sidewalk and masonry repairs, $125,000. District masonry restoration, $100,000. Replacing heating oil underground storage tank at Cheshire High School, $175,000. Regenerator ERV installation, Cheshire High School, $175,000. Mechanical tunnel improvements at CHS, $100,000. Athletic complex improvements, CHS, $50,000. And finally, district interior door replacements of $100,000. So that is the total of the fiscal 22 budget requests. More detail and full backup for all of these proposals are available on our website, cheshirect.org. And that will conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimball. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mr. Bowery?
I think that was quite thorough and gave a list of what projects are. We will have further budget workshops as time goes on. And quite frankly, we will have at least another public hearing and opportunity for the public to participate before we conclude.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bowery. Thank you, Mr. Kimball. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the public for questions and or comments. I do know we have a number of members of the public here, and I think, Ms. Talbot, you also have some correspondence that we've received from members of the public. So when we're done with the in-person comments that we may have, if you would be so kind, Ms. Talbot, to read whatever we've received from the public.
Certainly.
With that, I open it up to the public for comment and or question.
All right, so I'm going to unmute the line of the first member of the public, Doreen Pruitt. I'm going to click allow to talk, and you should be able to talk directly to the council. So give me 1 second. All right, let's see if this works. Doreen, are you there? Looks like you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you.
I'm here.
Oh, good. All right, please go ahead when you're ready.
Well, I have a little concern about the Cheshire Street sidewalks. Our houses are on the side that is very close to the road. And if you put sidewalks on our side, not only do I have a well in the front yard, but I have a fence, I have stones. They've already been moved back as it is with the road widening. And now they'll be walking through my living room. So I think something needs to be checked out there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pruitt. We appreciate your comment. I'm not sure that anyone wants to respond. I appreciate your reach out to me, Ms. Pruitt. I know you sent me directly an email, which I responded back to you, and I
Yes,
certainly
you
appreciate.
did.
I do appreciate your comments. It's important that we hear directly from those in that neighborhood. As I had mentioned to you that, we regularly put money in our capital budget for sidewalk extensions and repairs, really to improve connectivity, to be in line with our plan of conservation and development. But I think most importantly, just to make it safer for those in our community to move about and connect to those areas that they try to get to. And I know that Quinnipiac Park has been raised as an area that, has a bit of a main road when you're accessing it. So I think it's been identified by staff as a potential place to improve some of the sidewalks. But certainly, we're very interested in hearing what the local people in that area have to say and some of the concerns that you all have. And our process is not a final process yet. So while it's in the budget, it's obviously open for further deliberation. So I thank you for your comments, and I'm sure the full council and staff will take what you have to heart. We'll certainly be listening. And if we have any further questions or comments, I'm sure staff will be reaching out. So thank you.
I thank you also.
You're very welcome. Mr. Kimball, anyone else?
All right. Yes, we do. Hold on one second. Okay. And then we have George P. George, I'm going to unmute your line and you can talk directly to the council.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. I appreciate everyone's time. So I'm George Porto. I live in the Pondside neighborhood. So I'm just calling in to show my support for the sidewalk extension on Cheshire Street. Currently, we have that beautiful park. We have different neighborhoods off Cheshire Street, different dead end roads. And one of the issues we have is you really can't get from these neighborhoods to Cheshire Park. I won't have my kids walk on Cheshire Street. Cars drive fast and there's turns. It's pretty dangerous road. So, there's no way to safely get to Quinnipiac Park. It's a beautiful feature to the northeast part of Cheshire. So I think that not only, this sidewalk would not only provide a safe way to get to the park, but another benefit to it is really if you put the sidewalks or at least connect what's existing, right, together, there now is a way to walk to different neighborhoods. So my children have friends on streets around the corner or just down the street in the same neighborhood. There's no way for them to get to these houses. And again, I'm not having my children walk along Cheshire Street. By adding this sidewalk, not only does it allow people who walk, run, push carriages to walk from their neighborhoods to Cheshire Park, but now you're linked to these other neighborhoods that already have sidewalks. So, I mean, there's existing sidewalks around. And so by adding these sections, you're basically linking over 100 residences together. So not only do all these residences now have a safe way to get to the park, but they now have a safe way to walk and sort of get to each other's neighborhoods or houses. So that really is why I am supporting this Cheshire Street sidewalk extension, and this is sort of another benefit that sort of comes with it is the houses in the neighborhoods can then say they have basic access to the park, which I think is a nice selling point when you're trying to sell your houses. And if I'm a family who's buying in this neighborhood, that is a feature that I would very much enjoy. So that's what I'd have to say. I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Porter. We appreciate your time tonight. I know it's very valuable. And a lot of what you said is the reason why that area has been identified. And I referenced some of it when I responded earlier to Ms. Pruitt. So we certainly understand your thoughts. And again, that's the biggest reason why I think it's on the list. Obviously, our goal is to do these as least impactful as we can to people's private property. And so, the comments from Ms. Pruitt will be well taken. We want to work around certain obstacles in situations like this where and when we can. But obviously, the goal here is to do exactly what you're suggesting, which is to create connectivity to neighborhoods, give access to parks and schools and areas where we have our retail establishments and such. The biggest reason is for safety, but it does improve value, and for a lot of reasons, it's why the council has decided to invest in this endeavor. So thank you, Mr. Porto, for your comments tonight.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Very welcome. Is there anyone else, Mr. Kimball?
No one else in the attendee room, but I think our net received an email or two.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Talbot, would you mind reading some of those or all
I would
of
be
those,
happy
please?
to. Yep. There are 3 emails. The first, in no particular order, it's from Nicole Miller from North Pond Road. She writes, I'm writing to voice my support for sidewalks on Cheshire Street and the surrounding area. This is a very high traffic area, making it dangerous for walking on the street. We have another message from Deanna and Tony Spinelli. No ad. They live on Cheshire Street. And they write, I'm writing in support of the Quinnipiac Park Sidewalk Project. I live at 1251 Cheshire Street and grew up on Warden Circle my whole childhood. Sidewalks have been proposed many times in the past 25 years that I've lived here, but never approved. This poses great dangers for families walking to and from the park for soccer, etc., and has always been a concern. Please accept our great support of this project. And I have one more from Maureen Crowley, who is 33 Trout Brook Road. And she writes, I wanted to email you to let you know that my husband and I are in favor of the sidewalks along Cheshire Street. I think it's a great idea. And there are no more comments in the inbox at the moment. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms. Talbot, and thank you to all three members of the community that wrote those emails or letters to all of us. Again, I think I addressed the issues as best I can, and we'll obviously be moving consideration of this project forward, taking all of your comments into account as we heard them. So thank you all for participating tonight. Again, if there's not any other public comment, I want to make sure I give every opportunity for public to engage. To join, even if it's last minute. Arnett or Sean, there's nobody in the waiting room looking to get on.
Nope, not present.
Obviously, the public can reach out to us in a whole lot of other formats. They can certainly reach out via phone to the town manager's office. They can certainly send emails, as some already did, to staff, which is either Ms. Talbot or Mr. Kimball, and any one of the town council members that are here as well. So feel free to reach out to us on this issue, and we really appreciate your input on matters like this. So if there's no other public comment, I'm going to go ahead and close and adjourn this public hearing. And I will move on to our regularly scheduled town council meeting, and I will call that meeting to order at approximately 7 p.m., May 11th, 2021. I do not believe we need to go into roll call or pledge of allegiance. We do have items for executive session. It is my understanding, Mr. Kimball, we're going to move executive session to the end of our meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And with that, we'll start with public communications and move on to item A, which is our COVID-19 update from our esteemed Chesapeake Health Director, Maura Esposito. Maura, thank you once again for being here. I don't know what more we can say. I mean, we keep telling you how great and wonderful you guys are, because you are. You guys have been working round the clock, day and night, to keep our community and the Tri-Town community as safe as they can, and getting them tested and vaccinated and all of the things that go to it. So, once again, kudos to you guys for everything you're doing. You're doing a phenomenal job. And I certainly want to thank the state of Connecticut. I think, Governor Lamont and all of his staff, in my opinion, has done a really good job of rolling this out here in the state of Connecticut. It's my understanding we're close to the top, if not at the top, of vaccination rollout in the country. I think, so many of the healthcare providers have done a phenomenal job. I know my wife is a nurse at Griffin Health, and, they have been working tirelessly at Hartford and Yale and St. Mary's and Trinity and so many others. I can't name them all, but I want to reach out to all of the healthcare providers who have been working selflessly to make sure that everyone who wants the vaccine are getting it, and getting it quickly, and hopefully moving us all towards a much more normal life. It's been a very difficult year for everyone. So thank you to all of the healthcare providers, and Maura, you and your staff. And I'm sorry to be long-winded, but I want to make sure that they all recognize how greatly we appreciate your efforts and their efforts. So Maura, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Takes many, that is for sure. And who knew we would ever have a pandemic in our lifetime? So I'll just give you some quick updates, and then I'll go into some numbers, because it sounds like you're going to have a long night. So as of May 1st, some of the curfews for the restaurants were all backed up to 12 o'clock. Bars were allowed to open outdoors. The 8-person seating limit outside was lifted, but it is still on the inside. Many people are looking forward to May 19th, when we are expecting the governor to eliminate most of the COVID restrictions for every sector, except the mask wearing requirement. He is still requiring the indoor mask. Also, the Department of Public Health is going to provide some more guidance on the outdoor larger venues. So, and there was good news. May 10th, the FDA said okay to the emergency authorization use of Pfizer for 12 to 15-year-olds. This is, they gave us notice last week to get ready to vaccinate. They are available to anybody in any facility, medical provider that is giving Pfizer for this age group. That includes pharmacies, large vaccination clinics, and some school clinics, which Chespercott is also hosting. Again, if your child is intending to get this vaccine, and I do hope people will really consider it, they're saying that basically it's the same side effects as the 16-year-old, or a little pain in the injection site, a little fever and fatigue, lasts 1 or 2 days. We really want to hope that people can get this vaccination, as this population does represent about 20 to 25% of our population, and having that group vaccinated will bring us closer to herd immunity. I will jump back to, just so you also know, Pfizer and Moderna are currently testing 12 years and under. So they're expecting that those vaccinations probably will be looking right around the fall time for the start of school. So we'll be forthcoming in that. We have some really great news in Cheshire this past week. We got out of the red zone again. So we have been really slow and steady. It is so glad to see an orange around a sea of red. And that is really about the diligence of the people that live here and are adhering to things, the public health mitigation strategies. As of yesterday, the state rates we were at about 430,000 plus positive cases. 280 people are still currently in the hospital. So just be mindful that our rates are going low, but it is still out there. We do have some variants, as everybody has been talking about. We have only had 6 cases of the variant B117 in the town of Cheshire. I've asked for some updates on that, but I haven't gotten anything yet. So right now, according to the governor, Cheshire has 2,276 cases with 51 deaths. Now, I don't have that many, so I've asked for some clarification as to, is this part of the prison numbers? They haven't gotten back to me. Cheshire residents have gone for over 77,000 tests. That's an amazing number, but at least to me, that says they know where to find these things. Our contact tracing, we continue doing our contact tracing. We are really focusing on the youth in our community. So, and our businesses. So we're assisting businesses when they don't quite know how to do, when they find out a positive. We are finding out that, yes, we have been quarantined still soccer teams, kids in the schools, because unfortunately it still is here. As a result of a lot of sports incidences through our district, I did send out a lot of updated information to all our leagues, and they have been pretty responsible and receptive to everything. The other thing that's popping up is all the camps. People have been looking for guidance. Many of our camps didn't open up last year, so they're opening up this year. So we've been providing them some guidance. Our schools, not just Cheshire, but also my other schools, asking for guidance for field trips, proms, graduation. On April 9th, the governor, the DPH gave out an end of year event guidance document. You know, I have a lot of faith in our community with our low numbers, getting into that orange. And if we can stay in that orange, that would really be wonderful. And really, a lot of the guidance was back in March and April, and looking forward to the fact that hoping our cases would come down. So I think we're going in the right direction. As far as vaccinations go, we're really good. 65 and older are at 100% getting their first dose. 45 to 64, first dose, almost 75%. 15 to 44, almost 60%. So we're at about an average of 63% of our population in Cheshire have gotten their first dose. That is a huge number, and I'm very proud to report that. Chespercott at this date has given 9,729 shots. This Saturday, we are planning to host a Pfizer clinic at the Woolkit High School, which I want to say thank you very much. We have been using the high school, and my volunteers really enjoy the space. Not that we didn't love the pool, but they really do enjoy the high school gym. We will be hitting our 10,000th vaccination, and so we're going to do a little celebration for when that person gets that shot. Like I said, the variants are still in the districts. There are 17 different variants identified at this time. Chespercott has only 11 cases, and they are all B117, and 6 of them are from Cheshire. And that's, I just wanted to give you some updates. Cheshire sites for COVID testing, if people are still looking to get COVID tested. We do have instances where there's been exposure and they're looking for places. We usually are recommending at the 5th day to go get a test. CVS on Highland Avenue and the Hartford Healthcare Go Health right on South Main Street do those tests. But also testing is everywhere around us at the Waterbury Brass Mall, Wheeler Clinic, Midstate Hospital. Griffin has been all over the place over in Naugatuck. They've got the mobile vehicles all over. You can go on to the state portal. There's not a lot of, there's much more product than need now, versus before there was higher need and not enough product. So we've flipped the boat, and now we're really chasing arms. We don't like to say that we got rid of vaccine waste, but I'm going to admit there was no, unfortunately, that is happening. The Department of Public Health has indicated now that is try your best not to do it, but they understand that if there is one person and you need to open up that vial for one person, you are to do so. Does that mean what do I do with the 9 other ones? I will try to see if I could get a person. It's getting very hard to find those people who haven't gotten vaccinated or don't want to get a vaccine. So we are wasting product. But overall, I think we're doing really good. Anything else, specific questions anybody has?
Thank you very much, Maura. I appreciate that update, and I will open it up to questions or comments. Mr. Slocum?
Yeah, Maura, I had a question because I was just being an observant. Actually, I was standing in line at a pharmacy and someone was purchasing an over-the-counter testing kit, something I wasn't really aware of, and she bought 2 of them. Is that just being done as well? I mean, they're just all over the place. People are buying over-the-counter stuff. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, they've been available for at least a month or 2 now.
Mhm.
When those labs receive those results, they are still required to report them.
Mhm.
But I
Okay.
can tell you that if you are looking for a fast turnaround, that probably is not your option.
Well, I was just curious. I just wondered how it all worked. It seemed curious to me. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Talbot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maura, thank you again for the update and for all that you're doing. What information do you have with regard to a relaxing, if you will, of the mask mandate, and specifically when it comes to gyms?
Well, we've been hearing that we definitely know that on May 19th, the governor should be releasing that he's going to be relaxing that requirement, but that still is only for outdoors. So the indoors is still applicable. So I think we're all waiting for May 19th. If it's indoors and if you cannot maintain the distance, I can't imagine that he's going to let it go, only because of the variant. And the hospitals are really seeing this variant in the cases that are in the hospital, really challenging for those people in the ICU. So I can't see his crystal ball, but there still is a lot of concern out there that this is still happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I see Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. And thank you, Maura, for all you guys are doing. Just a quick question in terms of with, the more and more youth sports opening up and school activities going on, and maybe this is a question for Dr. Sullivan too. The final determination between, whether they can have all these games and whether they can have graduation proms, all that stuff. Is that something that you're working with the schools on, or is it already back to normal and everything's going to run like it did 2 years ago?
Well, they clearly gave out some guidance to, and I'll let Jeff get into this more, but they gave out guidance to the schools on what methods they would prefer. Outdoors is always the preferred method. And I can say that I've met with Dr. Solon and Dr. Gadd and Mike Woods, and we've talked about all these things to make sure that the social distancing, to make sure that the risk to the kids are as low as possible. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Solon and let him update.
Sure, I would just only add to what Maura said by indicating that, there's another variable. We look at the different variables that influence our decisions all the time. And one of the emerging variables is vaccination. As Maura indicated, they've done a fantastic job, her team, vaccinating so many folks in our community. The greater number of people that we have vaccinated in our community, the lower the risk when you fold in things like distancing and mask wearing. So all of those are elements that we consider when we plan different events, Don. And so the graduation ceremony isn't for another month yet. I'm hopeful that things have changed even more so for the better by that time and give us a little bit more flexibility. In terms of sports, we work with Chespercott, Dr. O'Connor, our local physician for the district, and CIAC. So I think we're in a pretty good place now. We haven't seen any positive cases since, well, very few, if any, since April break. So we're moving in the right direction.
Thank
And
you.
I
appreciate it.
Sure, I just wanted to clarify, Maura, we talked a little bit about the Wolcott vaccine. Is that the 16th? And we're the 15th, I think, right?
Cheshire High School is the 15th Saturday from 9 to 5. So if there's any parents on here that were not notified through your school or through Cheshire Academy that need maybe have a child in another school district and they want their child included, just call our office, or just remember that Rite Aid and there are many other providers that are nearby. We are holding a Wolcott clinic on Sunday, and I do have lots of space available there. Wolcott is not that far, believe it or not. It's a very nice rural ride up there. So that clinic also goes from 9 to 5. And I would welcome anybody. We are taking people just walking in. They can come in. We're going to give them the paperwork. We fill it out all for you. You're going to get your vaccine. We are very lucky. We have a pediatrician at both clinics. So we have that specialty there because we are going to be giving much younger children these needles. But we are always open to anybody. So I don't want anyone to think that it is absolutely, we are just keeping it just to Cheshire High School or Cheshire Middle School. It is open to any Cheshire resident.
And Maura, while you're on that subject, just for the public's edification, do you know which vaccine you'll be giving to the Cheshire students?
Oh, Pfizer, because that's the only one that's allowed for this age group.
Okay, thank you. I thought parents might be interested in knowing that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh and Dr. Solon. Ms. Nichols, you had your hand up? Ms. Nichols, you're muted.
Okay, it's my eyes aren't so good. Maura, thanks for everything you're doing. And I don't want to bring in a negative at all, but I want to know if there's any evidence of, we've all been vaccinated and that's wonderful. And we're beginning to feel maybe a little bit less vulnerable and taking some chances. Has there been any information about people who have received the vaccine and still contracted COVID? And if so, what does that look like? Is it a lot? Is it a few, or is there no information?
So those people are called a breakthrough case. And we are looking at one right now. Anytime we have those, we have to report them up to the state health department. I can count them on one hand.
Okay.
From our interview with these cases, it's usually a very mild. Again, most of these, I will tell you, right now, it is so, people that have allergies are really suffering, and the symptoms of COVID mimic allergies. So
okay,
if you have your allergies and you take your medicine and they go away, it's probably allergies. If it doesn't, you may want to be checking your temperature and going and getting tested or talk to your doctor.
thank you, because I think some people are still concerned about that and what would happen if they should be with people who had been tested positive. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. That was an excellent question, one that I was going to ask also. So thank you for that. Other questions or comments? Great people think alike, right, Ms. Nichols?
That's it.
Other questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Jenks.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Maura, I think you already said this, but I just didn't hear it. So the clinic in Wolcott High School it's going down to 12-year-olds, right? 12 to 15 now?
Yes. You
Okay.
have to have, because it's under 18, you have to have your parents present. So
Sure.
the parents sign a consent form, but the parent has to come with the child or the guardian.
And are you planning any Cheshire events at some point soon for that age group, or
Saturday,
this Saturday?
this Saturday, the 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I don't see any. I had a couple quick questions. Ms. Esposito, any news on boosters? I know, those that have gotten vaccinated very early on in the process are probably coming up on that 6-month window, and you read about that they believe the vaccine is good for 6 months, maybe more. What's the thinking on boosters, and where does that stand?
The Department of Public Health right now is basically just putting us in a holding pattern, that if it does happen that Pfizer or Moderna need to do a booster, that there's going to be some discussion as to who's going to be administering that. And of course, my department would always step up to the plate if it was needed. I will be honest with you, I don't know off the top of my head. They kind of keep saying it's down the road. When we get there, it's down the road.
And thank you for that. Is there a concern that those that were the earliest in terms of being vaccinated could run out of their, their antibodies and be susceptible? I mean, how do we manage that?
That's a great question that I just don't have the answer to, Rob. I'll be honest with you. I just have not read up enough on it. There's been a lot of debates because this is so new, and the studies are all still coming out, and lots of studies are going to be coming out with suggestions. So as soon as we get a reliable source from the CDC and from the Department of Public Health, I'm sure that we're going to be talking a lot about it.
Yeah, I think it's important that as soon as you have any information on that we can disseminate it to the public, because, as Ms. Nichols said, people are finally feeling like they can get a little bit back to normal. And, those that are most vulnerable in our community were the ones that got it first. And so, I think we're all concerned about, how long does the vaccine work? How do we make sure that we keep them as safe as we possibly can? None of us want this to be a forever kind of a scenario, but I think we need to be thinking along those lines. And so I'm sure you already are, and I know you don't have great answers, but we'd love to know more when you do.
Lots of discussions on the professional level of where we're going and what we're doing. And I'm sure that our immunization groups are going to be discussing it. We have a meeting next week. So I'm sure it's going to be discussed. And as soon as we know something, we'll be discussing it.
Great. Thank you very much, Maura. One last try. Any last comments or questions for Ms. Esposito? I know you're really busy, Maura, so we want to let you go. Seeing none. Well, thanks again, Maura, for being here. And thank you for
Good
all
night,
you
everybody.
appreciate it. We will move on to item 4B, which is public comment. Ms. Talbot or Mr. Kimball, do we have any members of the public that would like to make a public comment on any matter?
So I was just communicating with a member of the public who was in the attendee list here, although he was indicating that he was here to listen to any items related to the sidewalk proposal at Cheshire Street. And he was asking in the chat curious about the project details and when the project would take place. So he didn't indicate he'd like to speak at this point. So I think, again, as the council will be taking that up further in the coming weeks and months, there will be more opportunity for more detail about any proposed project that we're kind of in the early stages, as I was just communicating with him in the chat. So.
Yeah, and just to reiterate for the individual who may be listening, this is a process that we've been investing in as a town council, the sidewalk improvement and extensions. It's something that we believe is good for the community for connectivity purposes. It's in line with our plan of conservation and development. And probably more importantly, it's just a great safety measure to make sure that our citizens are off the roads and have a safe place to travel, particularly when you're trying to connect to our retail corridor, our schools, and our parks and our recreational facilities. And so we've really embarked on a plan to try to improve those efforts. And that's why it's in this budget that area has been identified as one that meet those standards. We're obviously very interested in hearing those that live in that market, what their thoughts are. We've heard, one person who had some concerns about her personal property, and I think we need to listen to that. And there were a number of people that were very supportive of the effort in order to get to Quinnipiac Park and not have to walk on a very busy and heavily traveled Cheshire Street. So, that's really the reason behind this. We're going to continue to look into it. It is not a done deal. As we get through the capital budget process, we'll be talking a little bit more about that specific project, but that's really an update and an overview of what's going on with our sidewalk expansion. If the individual is here and wants to make a comment, it is certainly more than appropriate, and we'd love to hear from you at the moment. If not, you can reach out to us, privately through email or phone call, and we'd be certainly happy to answer any of your questions regarding that. So if that individual's not interested in speaking, Sean, are there any other members of the public?
That's all I have here. Arnett, is there anyone else in the comments for the email?
No other comments.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Kimball and Ms. Talbot. And with that, then we'll move on to item 5, which is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 13th, 2021, our special meetings of April 22, 28, and May 6th, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Any questions or comments on the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Looks like the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to item 6, which is our consent calendar, and I will move that to Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 051121-1. Be it resolved that the town council approves the consent calendar for May 11, 2021 as presented.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barr. Are there any questions or comments from members of council on the consent calendar?
Do we have a
Get a second? I'd like to.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. My
Second.
apologies. Second, Mr. Veliver.
All right. Just briefly, as we have every month, continues to amaze me, yet it doesn't, because we know we have such a generous community. 13 generous gifts we are accepting and a grant tonight with the consent calendar, and just continue to be appreciative of our community helping our neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Barr, and I see we have a second from Mr. Veliver. Mr. Veliver, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say, obviously, is all these things on the consent calendar are good, but I just wanted to point out the memorial bench for Butch Hanover. Butch Hanover was a friend of mine and a friend of my brother's, and a friend of the family's for a long time. And I want to thank the people who contributed to his bench. I think that'll be a great addition, and for a great person that we lost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veliver. Any other questions or comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, and just another notable item is, I don't know that we've seen any of these before, but there was a very generous donation from James Berchinski for a memorial picnic table in honor of Alice and Harry Berchinski. And I haven't seen the picnic table yet. We've had a lot of benches, so I'm kind of excited to see what the picnic table looks like. So thank you for that donation as well. And if there is no other questions or comments, I'll call for a vote on the consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We move on to item 8, old business A, which is discussion and possible approval of a successor lease for the Hitchcock Phillips House. And with that, I'll turn it to Mr. Veliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to raise this, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 051121-2. Be it resolved, the town council authorizes the execution of a 3-year successor lease with the Cheshire Historical Society, Inc. for 43 Church Street, known as the Hitchcock Phillips House, for the term of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, under the same terms and conditions as the current lease.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Back to you, Mr. Veliver.
Thank you very much. So this is just the extension of the lease for the Historical Society, which is located on Church Drive. That is the horseshoe-shaped street in front of the Congregational Church around what's known as the Town Green. And this allows the Historical Society to continue their lease under the same terms as they currently are for the next 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Is there any questions or comments from members of the council on this matter? Yes, Mr. Borwe.
Just a brief comment. I have to say the Historical Society has been a wonderful treasure for us in this community. The last 10, 12 years, they've revitalized themselves and done quite a few upgrades to that building, which they don't even own, has been great. As committee chair for Troop 92, I've had several Eagle Scouts that have done projects there, and I think it has been a terrific asset to our town to have that there. Sunday, hopefully they'll be going back to their Sunday open. We have such treasures there. We have a traveling desk from President Pierce. We have some great treasures there. And if people haven't had a chance to go there, I take this opportunity to remind everybody that they should try to go over there when they have the Sunday open houses once COVID is over. They're just a terrific group.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. I just have a technical question maybe for Sean or our town attorney, Attorney D'Onofrio. I know in the contract they call for a minimum requirement of them, the tenant, maintaining $1 million of liability insurance. Does the town, since it is a town-owned property, does the town have kind of a blanket policy in addition to that that would work beyond or over that policy that they hold?
As a town-owned property, it should be covered under the town's commercial general liability policy as well as excess insurance.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's it for my questions. And if there's no other questions or comments from members of the council, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9, new business. A, discussion and possible action regarding agreement with Colliers for continuing consulting services for school modernization. With that, Ms. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 051121-3. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves continuing the consulting agreement with Colliers Project Leaders for the School Modernization Plan Project Pre-Referendum Phase 3. refinement of preferred options under the same hourly billing arrangement as the original agreement and allocates up to $25,000 for said services.
Second.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Barry.
The Budget Committee met earlier on this item, and we made a suggested change, which is up on the screen now.
Okay.
Talbot and Mr. Kimball worked hard in between an adjustment to this, where the funds are going to come from, and the fact that it was refinement of options as opposed to refinement of preferred option, which doesn't tie our hands that way. It gives us the ability to look at any options that we may want to, any type of expenditures, even break up the other options, plus the second paragraph. So I would.
All right, so let me add that second paragraph just to clarify for the people who are listening. Be it further resolved that the town council allocates $15,007 from the capital planning account to supplement the remaining balance of $9,993 from the appropriation for the school modernization, from the school modernization account. So that just is a correction to that resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols, and thank you, Mr. Barry, for clarifying that. We do need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And I do think this is the intent of what we are trying to accomplish, is to replenish 25,000 for now. I was not aware that there was, $10,000 remaining in that account. So I certainly support this, and I imagine the rest of the council does as well. So thank you for that clarification from the Budget Committee, Mr. Barwi. And with that, are there any, Ms. Nichols, anything you want to add?
No, I think you mentioned it further earlier in the public hearing. It's just important that we continue, we think, with this company who has guided us this far. And now the project is in the hands of the council and the Board of Education, and to get clarification will be extremely valuable in making our final decisions. So I support it 100%.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. And if I might, just add for the public's edification, obviously, a number of weeks ago, we received the presentation from the School Modernization Committee as to their recommendations. We greatly appreciate their hard work. As we've said, the council has been mired in a very difficult budget process. It looks as though we're starting to come out of the tunnel on the operating budget and getting into the capital budget, which is really the most appropriate time to be discussing a lot of capital items, including school modernization and other things. So just so the public knows, I will be putting on the agenda some meetings in the near future for the council to begin deliberating more on school modernization. And the start of that is to ensure that we have dollars in our coffers to ensure that the consultant who worked alongside the SMC is still in place and will walk alongside the town council and the Board of Ed, who is also working on this as well. I know they've been doing some of their own independent review from their perspective. The council will begin doing some of ours. I am very confident that there will be a quality collaboration of both of those bodies during this process. And this is really just setting the tone for hopefully these meetings that are going to be on our agenda very soon. So with that, are there any questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. We will move on to 9B, which is acceptance and appropriation of a small cities grant for the Cheshire Housing Authority for Beachport repairs and improvements. And with that, I'm going to turn to Mr. Walsh, and this is one that we are all very happy to accept on behalf of Beachport.
Absolutely. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 051121-4. Be it resolved that resolution number 031020-3, authorizing application for a $1,500,000 community development block grant from the State of Connecticut Department of Housing on behalf of the Cheshire Housing Authority, has not been rescinded or modified in any way, and be it resolved that the town council accepts and appropriates a $1,500,000 community development block grant number SC 2000021A from the State of Connecticut Department of Housing on behalf of the Cheshire Housing Authority to support the Cheshire Housing Authority's repair and improvement projects at Beachport Apartments, and authorizes town manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all agreements and documents necessary for said grant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second? Thank you,
I'll
Mr. Veliver. Back to you, Mr. Walsh.
Well, this is, I'm the liaison for the Cheshire Housing Authority, and I know they've been waiting for this because it's much needed funds that they need to improve on the apartments over at Beachport, as well as the parking area and a number of other projects they have. And it's going to go a long way in helping the people who live over there. And I'm just thrilled that they were able to get this grant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, obviously, we're very happy to accept this. And I want to thank the members of the committee who worked on this, staff who worked on getting this grant. This is money that will be very well spent over there. And I know the residents are eagerly awaiting some of these improvements and look forward to them. So I'm sure this will hopefully be a unanimous vote in favor. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. We'll move on to 9C, which is discussion and possible action regarding the acceptance of our fiscal year 19-20 audit. Ms. Nichols, please.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Hopefully this will also be a unanimous decision. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 051121-5. Simply be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the audit committee, the town council accepts the fiscal year 2019-2020 comprehensive annual financial report audit.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Do we have a second?
Second.
Pavano, thank you very much, Ms. Pavano. Back to you, Ms. Nichols.
All right, this is something we have to do annually. We have hired a firm, Clifton Larson Allen LLP, which was hired to conduct an annual audit, which we do. And the goal of that audit is to just provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements of the town are materially free of any misstatements. And it involves the state and the federal audit and several components, and I'll ask Jim to talk to it. But the good news is that the independent firm agreed that we were in good shape and they approved our policies. They made some recommendations, which Jim will talk to you, nothing significant, but it's a process. And so we're pleased, as always, to thank our financial people and staff in town to provide with us, Sean and Jim and all the staff of that financial office to provide very accurately presented financial statements. So I hope we will approve the acceptance of the audit. But Jim, if you would like to opine a little bit more.
Sure.
On what happened, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what you stated, Sylvia, that the audit had a clean opinion on the financial statement presentation. There were no material weaknesses in our internal controls. So those are the probably two most important things we look at to make sure we don't have any of those bad things. There were, however, several recommendations for consideration to management, which we are evaluating, frankly, with the audit committee to see if they're warranted, taking into consideration any cost considerations. For example, they suggested, perhaps we institute a fraud hotline. That's something we've never had here before. And it's likely something we're going to pursue. And they had a couple other similar suggestions about perhaps a fraud risk assessment as another example. And I know we have something already in the works with regards to education deposits. There was a separate review of those procedures that was scheduled quite some time ago, but because of COVID, it's been delayed. But my understanding is that will proceed shortly. I know it's slated to be on the next Board of Ed agenda for consideration, and so hopefully that will be moving along, moving forward. They also had a couple of suggestions as far as segregation of duties and control documentation. But again, I think, all of that we need to weigh with considering, costs involved if they're warranted. But in summary, there were no material weaknesses, and we had a clean opinion on our financial statement. So I'm thrilled. It was a kind of an unusual year because of COVID. We had to do a lot of the audit communication, over the internet and so forth, and through a lot of Zoom meetings. So it added a little time and complexity to the process. But overall, everything went well in the end. And I just, we're in the process of budgeting fiscal 22 right now, and we're well into the way of fiscal 21. But I just thought I'd quickly recap fiscal 20. We had a $2.79 million surplus, which is unprecedented. A lot of that was due to COVID. We had a $344,000 favorable revenue variance, which was predominantly due to our conservative budgeting for tax revenue. And we had a $2.44 million favorable expenditure variance. And again, that's unprecedented. About 50% of that, over 50% of that was Board of Education favorable results of operations. And a lot of it had to do with, the loss of programming with the first, say, 9 months of COVID. And I know, we put into expenditure freezes and personnel freezes during that time period too, because of all the uncertainty we were facing. That gave us a lot of flexibility, that $2.79 million surplus, to fund the budget that we're using now. We were able to use $2 million of that to help mitigate any tax increase in this current fiscal year. And it also gives us pretty good cushion going forward too, for consideration and use of the 22 budget. So having said that, I don't know if anybody has any specific questions, but I think the results were very favorable all the way around.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jascott and Ms. Nichols. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none. And Jim, thank you for all your hard work, you and Gina DeFilio and your staff. It's great that we've got a clean audit. It's equally great that, in a tough year, we were able to reaffirm our AAA credit rating. This council staff have worked very hard at a very difficult time to ensure that we receive that AAA credit rating. It's really important to our borrowing base and our ability to borrow as cheaply as we possibly can and minimize the impacts to the public relative to our mill rate. So, again, I know we've talked about this in the past, Jim, but you and your staff, you and Gina and all of your staff deserve a lot of kudos to that, because it was a very difficult year. We had a 0 mill rate increase last year. We wanted to make sure we did that for the public because we knew they were suffering. And in spite of all that, we were able to make sure that we reaffirmed our AAA credit rating going forward. And I know not every community can do that, but Cheshire can. And it's just another reason why we're such a great community. And Jim, you and Gene and your staff play a big part in that. And obviously Sean and Arnett do as well. So thank you for that. So if there's no other questions or comments on this matter, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to 9D, which is discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of the auditor for fiscal 2021. And with that, I'll turn it to Ms. Pavano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 051121-6, Resolution 051121-6. Be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Audit Committee, the Town Council appoints Clifton Larson Allen LLP as auditors for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pavano. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols, members of our Audit Committee. Back to you, Ms. Pavano.
Yes, the Audit Committee was very happy with the audit that we received, and we are recommending that they be hired for the future audits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Anything, Jim, anything to add regarding?
Yeah,
the
the only thing I would add is, we went out to bid last year. This would be the second year of a more or less 5-year proposal. It's actually a 3-year contract with an option to extend an additional 2 years. But the audit committee, I don't think any of us felt there was any compelling reason why we would want to make a change. I think we got very good pricing when we went out to bid for this. So that's pretty much all I have to say on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaskat. Appreciate it. Any questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9E, discussion and possible action regarding award of RFP for the purchase of electricity. Mr. Veliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 05-1121-7. Be it resolved, the Town Council authorizes the town manager to execute a contract for electricity supply for a term of 36 months at a rate not to exceed 0.0775 per kilowatt hour.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Barry. Mr. Veliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is simply an authorization to allow the town manager to go out and acquire the ability to purchase electricity over the next up to 36 months for a rate not to exceed that amount. It seems like a good amount, but I want to turn it over to either Jim Jaskat or Sean Kimball to discuss some of the terms of that and some of the background for that decision. So.
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in again, Sean, if.
Oh, you.
Okay. I just want to say our current electric supply contract runs through November 30th this year. So we wanted to get a jump start because our consultant is telling us that electricity is likely going to go up from here, rebounding from the COVID pandemic, stimulus funds, and so forth. So we currently are paying 0.081 per kilowatt hour, and pricing as of about a week ago was at 0.073. So it would have resulted in savings of over $20,000. Although I understand that when we refreshed pricing today, it had already gone up a little bit, so it's probably going to be a little bit less than that. But again, we're looking for the flexibility for Sean when we refresh pricing next to consider either a 1, 2, or 3 year contract going forward. We think this is the time to do it before prices go up any further. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jaskat. Questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Kimball, it's all on you, sir. You make sure you pick the right day to lock us in.
Yeah, exactly.
You know it. Yep. I've got good advisors, so
all right.
Put my trust in them.
Sounds good, but it looks like we're in an environment where we could save some money, correct, Mr. Jaskat?
Yeah, I think anything we can do to get pricing below what we've been paying, and I thought we already had pretty good prices for the last several years. So, if we can lock it in at a price less than what we're paying right now, I'm real happy with that.
Right. Keep saving the taxpayers' money. We like that.
Thank you for finding that.
You got it. Okay, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 9F, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the intermunicipal sewerage agreement with the town of Wallingford for 1525 Tuttle Avenue. Ms. Pavano.
Yes, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 05-1121-8. Be it resolved that the town council approves the intermunicipal sewerage agreement with Wallingford for 1525 Tuttle Avenue and authorizes the town manager to execute said agreement pursuant to town attorney's approval of the document.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Ms. Pavano?
Yes, this is an agreement with a resident of Cheshire who wishes to connect his sewage to the town of Wallingford, which would mean that he would be paying his bill to Wallingford instead of Cheshire. I'd like to defer this to Attorney Denafrio to explain why this contract or agreement is necessary.
Well, the agreement would be necessary if it was in fact acceptable to me, but it's not.
Okay.
There's a concern that I have that I brought to the attention of the Corporation Counsel for the town of Wallingford. And the concern is as follows, okay? It's perfectly appropriate to have an interlocal agreement whereby a property owner in Cheshire is given access to the town of Wallingford sewer system for connection purposes. It's a perfectly appropriate topic for an interlocal agreement. Under this interlocal agreement, the way it works is Wallingford grants the property owner access to the sanitary sewer. Wallingford bills the property owner. Wallingford has the right to lien the property, the same right that Cheshire would have if Cheshire was providing the service. But further, if the property owner doesn't pay the charges that are assessed and levied by Wallingford, Wallingford has the ability to make demand upon the town of Cheshire for payment. However, there's no termination provision in the interlocal agreement. And the statute, the enabling statute that provides for the creation of interlocal agreements provides that all interlocal agreements are supposed to have a process for termination. Now, I understand that this is an interlocal agreement for the provision of sanitary sewer service. So we wouldn't want a situation where, the property is disconnected from the sewer. However, I also don't want a situation where Cheshire is left holding the bag if the property owner doesn't pay the charges that are assessed by Wallingford. Because like I said, Wallingford under this interlocal agreement has the lien rights. So Cheshire would have to make the payments that are owed by the property owner in the event the property owner defaults, and then have to chase the property owner with no lien rights. So what I've proposed to Wallingford is that we have a simple provision that allows Cheshire, in the event that it's called upon to make payment due to default by the property owner, the ability to terminate the interlocal agreement. So the Corporation Counsel is discussing that proposed edit with Wallingford Water and Sewer, and I've not received a response back yet.
And thank you, Attorney D'Onofrio, for that summary. And I guess, so what you're suggesting is that the inter-town agreement would terminate, and then the town of Cheshire would have its normal lien rights potentially, correct?
Well, you wouldn't have your normal lien rights. You'd have the ability, if you end up having to pay, you would have the ability to terminate the agreement. My concern is if it happens once, it's one thing to pursue someone in small claims court. But if it happens repeatedly and we don't have the ability to terminate the agreement, what incentive does the property owner have to make the payments other than to avoid Wallingford's lien?
Right.
So I'm trying to avoid a situation where the town of Cheshire in perpetuity is left having to pay Wallingford without the ability to stop the indebtedness by terminating the interlocal.
So the way the agreement reads is that if the owner of the property doesn't pay the fees to Wallingford, they have the rights to lien, correct?
Correct.
However,
Correct.
if they don't get paid, they then can pursue the town of Cheshire. And this was a question that I had. I'm in favor of an agreement to help these individuals out, but I want to make sure it's documented properly. So obviously, to the extent that the town of Cheshire is called upon to make good for the town of Wallingford on the outstanding fees, you're suggesting that we would go ahead and terminate that intertown agreement. Why would we not want to also ask for lien rights in addition to that at that point, so that we can protect our ability to get reimbursed for the money we've had to pay to Wallingford?
Well, just to back up a second, okay? In the event that you don't have lien rights because you're not providing the sewage service. You're not providing the service. So under the statute, you wouldn't have the statutory lien rights. That doesn't mean that if Wallingford makes demand on Cheshire and Cheshire pays Wallingford, that you wouldn't be able to lien the property by bringing a civil action with a prejudgment remedy attachment. That's how you would lien the property. But what I'm concerned about is the scenario where this happens multiple times, where Wallingford doesn't get paid, they make demand on the town, and the town ends up having to make the payment and doesn't have the ability to stop future bills from becoming an indebtedness of the town. So, I also think that if we have the ability to terminate the interlocal, it minimizes the likelihood of a default by the property owner.
Yes, Mr. Veliver.
Sorry, I didn't want to, if you had more questions, go ahead, Rob. I just wasn't sure if you were.
No, go ahead, Dave.
My question is, if we terminate this intermunicipal agreement that we would have, just out of curiosity, where does that leave the house as far as their sewer rights go? Right now, they're hooking into Wallingford. If Wallingford won't take them because they're not paying and we've terminated this interlocal, then what happens to the sewer use for the house? Because obviously we don't have it, it's not part of our system,
Right.
and Wallingford's not going to take it. So what happens to the house in that situation?
Well, that's the reason why I haven't received an answer from Wallingford yet, because they're trying to figure that out. I mean, the reality is, if you take the position that, listen, they have no other access to sewer and septic isn't a desirable option, then we have to have some mechanism in the interlocal agreement to deal with the scenario where Cheshire pays. And so one way that I would propose to deal with it is, prior to terminating the interlocal agreement, we would give 60 days notice to the property owner that we intend to terminate unless we're reimbursed. In other words, we would do everything possible to avoid a termination. But I think, just looking at this from the town's perspective and understanding that it may not even be the current property owner that we're worried about, okay? This runs with the land. It could be a future property owner. We just can't have a scenario where the town has an obligation to make payment essentially in lieu of the property owner and no ability to stop it.
Right. No, I get that. I'm just curious if they can't go to Wallingford and they can't come to Cheshire because we don't have the lines there. And I guess I don't know anything about this property per se as to whether it has an existing septic system that they just don't want to use, that they want to use sewer, or if the septic system has failed. But I just want to be in a position where, does that effectively, the house gets essentially uninhabitable if they can't go, if they can't work out something?
Well, we have to work that issue out. I haven't gone back to the property owner's lawyer yet because I haven't received a substantive response from Wallingford. Once I know what Wallingford's position is, I'll contact the property owner's lawyer and see, what we can work out and come back to you with what I think is in the best interest of the town.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Other questions or comments?
So we need to table this, Mr. Chair, because we can't vote on it.
Well, I don't know if we need to table it. I would throw out that we could vote to approve it subject to, I'm throwing this out there, that we vote to approve it subject to the town attorney working out satisfactory language relative to this issue. I mean, in an effort to try to advance it, I would personally be comfortable with that. I do have some concerns that once the property ties into sewer, to have a mechanism within which you could stop their ability to use the sewer, to Mr. Veliver's point, makes the house uninhabitable. I don't think that's a scenario we want to get into. So I would like to try to find some language that is workable for the tri-party individuals to ensure we don't get to that point, because that's not a place anyone wants to be. And I don't want to put a homeowner in a position where, they have to leave their home because they have no sewer capability. My apologies. So I see Mr. Talbot has a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The resolution actually does read at the end that authorizes the town manager to execute said agreement pursuant to town attorney approval. So once we got the town attorney approval, then we're authorizing Sean to go ahead and execute it. So I think it's kind of in there already.
Yeah, so as long as everyone, thank you, Mr. Talbot, for bringing that up. But as long as everyone understands that the approval is subject to final acceptance of language by our town attorney. Mr. Wall?
Yeah, thank you. I just curious, do we have other similar agreements already in place that we may need to look into now because of this?
I haven't seen any, but I've only been on board for about 45 days.
I'm just concerned that if I've heard that we may have other others with this similar agreement, and perhaps we may need to look into those as well. I mean, is it for a certain amount of years, or that?
No, you know, I can tell you that I've done them in other towns. And the only piece that makes this one different is Cheshire's obligation to reimburse Wallingford. In other words, of course, the municipality providing the service bills the property owner. Of course, the municipality providing the service has lien rights against the property. What makes this piece different is the obligation, the proposed obligation that Cheshire make the payment. So another way of dealing with this in lieu of termination rights is the elimination of Cheshire's obligation to make payment to Wallingford. In other words, just tell Wallingford, if you don't get paid, you lien the property just like you would if it was in your own town.
Okay.
And Don, we,
The best solution, you know, I don't know whether they'll be amenable to it, but thank you for that. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I saw Mr. Kimball, 1 second, if you don't mind. Mr. Slocum, did you have a question or comment?
Well, Don did address it, but I know for certain we do have a significant agreement in some form or another on Wallingford Road. And maybe that's language you could look at, make sure it's not screwed up, but maybe it doesn't matter. But we do have more than just this one.
Right, and I was just going to say, we also have, I believe on Rita Avenue, there's an agreement with Waterbury on the other side of the hill for a couple of properties that are served by Waterbury sewer.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to have, you know, Attorney D'Onofrio review those, just so we understand if there are similar issues with those. Contracts are contracts, and I suspect if we've signed them, we have to live to them.
Right.
But certainly we want to learn going forward, and, you know, I'm very happy that Attorney D'Onofrio was here. One of the reasons that I felt very comfortable with Attorney D'Onofrio was that he had extensive contractual experience, and this is an area that I felt we needed some additional look. So I'm glad that he's taking a look at this stuff. Obviously, we want to work with the homeowner in an effort to try to get the sewers that they'd like to access, but we just want to make sure it's fair to everybody. So I think it's really appropriate we advance this with the resolution that's on the table. It talks about making sure that our town attorney is comfortable with the final language of the contract. Any objection to that?
Nope.
Great, then I guess we'll advance the resolution as presented. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Looks like it's unanimous, correct?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Attorney D'Onofrio, on this information. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kimball, I never got back to you. My apologies.
No, you did. I chimed in with the Waterbury comment.
Okay,
We're
thanks.
good. No problem.
Tough to get old. I'm losing my mind. We're going to move on to 9G, which is discussion and possible action regarding Norton Cafeteria bids and project delay. Mr.
Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 051121-9. Be resolved and be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Public Building Commission, the town council postpones the advancement of the Norton School cafeteria renovations capital project to avoid multi-year school disruptions and to enable the part-time funding and for the project to be completed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum?
Well, the bottom line here is we did get bids that really exceed our ability to pay, and we could also not without further funding through referendum or whatever. Plus the complexities of doing it in the time needed to get it done. They just felt their recommendation is to postpone it, not eliminate it, but take a revisit when things are better. George, you may well be able to enhance my description of this, but that's how I saw it.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Slocum. Good evening, everybody. I won't. I'll try not to add too much more, but I was at the Public Building Commission meeting, so I can give you a little background. The two bids. Well, initially, the PBC came before the council with asking for direction on this project because the estimates were so high, and the council asked the PBC to kind of either break up the project into phases or value engineer it a little bit to try to get it under the within the available budget or close. And the PBC bid the project with 3 alternates. So there's a base bid and 3 alternates, which I won't go into unless anybody wants to hear the details. The base bid costs were within the available budget. However, it would leave very little for contingency. So they'd need another $35,000 or $40,000 probably to have a healthy contingency to move forward with the project, which exceeds the available budget of about $370,000 currently. So the PBC looked at it and they came back with a recommendation to disqualify the bid of Northeast Building Contractors because there were some clarifications submitted that were not to the PBC's liking and probably not to the council's liking either, absolving them of any issues for COVID and some other things. And that left one bidder, which isn't the greatest situation, of course. And further, we're getting late in the school construction year. At this point, there's only about a little over 30 days before you need to start construction. Not to mention ordering all the equipment and everything else. It'll get pretty tight very quickly. And material costs and everything else being high like they are, the PBC just felt that they made a recommendation that the council not pursue this project this year and maybe consider it next year or additional funding or whatever the council chooses at that point. So that's where it sits.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nowotny. And I see Mr. Massiana is here also from the school. Thank you, Vin, for being here tonight. Anything you'd like to add on this matter?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, everyone. What I'd like to add is that as part of the capital budget request that you had a public hearing tonight for, there is an additional $175,000 that was requested for this project. So we will be taking the matter up when we discuss the capital budget. I'm not sure the 175,000 after bidding it is enough, but we will take that up. And the point is that the request is in so that we can do the project in its entirety next summer, assuming the additional funding is approved. So I agree with the Public Building Commission's recommendation on this one to delay it for another year.
Thank you, Mr. Massiana. And I think that's probably the right idea. Looking at the cost of the alternates, it seems to me that, trying to do the project with the appropriate alternates that you want is the right way to do it. The council was hoping in an effort to try to get this project moving for you guys and for the kids that maybe we'd come up with an option that would work for us, but it didn't pan out. So I certainly understand where you all are on this recommendation, and I appreciate your thoughts on it. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the council on this matter? Seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9H, which is discussing impossible action regarding bid waiver for hazardous materials survey. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 051121-10. Be it resolved that the town council approves a waiver of bid for hazardous materials testing bid specification development and post-abatement clearance testing for the cafeteria upgrades at Norton School, and approves the engagement of ChemScope for said work for a fee not to exceed $4,475 pursuant to the request of the Public Building Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Walsh?
Well, ChemScope is the firm that the public schools have been using routinely for hazardous material surveys and are very familiar with the building, so it makes sense to keep them involved in it.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Massiana, anything you want to add to this matter?
No, I think Mr. Walsh nailed it. We're good on that one.
Pretty self-explanatory. Thank you. But I appreciate you being here tonight, Vin. Thank you.
you.
Questions or comments, Mr. Jinks?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a quick question. Is this because of the anticipated kitchen project in Norton, or is this just something we do on a regular basis?
This was specifically the pre-construction surveillance for the Norton Kitchen project. So the use of these proceeds won't go to waste. We'll just use it for next year when we do the project.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9I, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the final design for the police department lockers capital project and authorization to bid. Mr. Veliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 051121-11. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the final design for the police department locker rooms and the HVAC improvements project and authorizes the Public Building Commission to bid construction for said project.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. We have a second, Mr. Walsh. Sorry, back to you, Mr. Veliver.
Okay, thank you very much. This was a project that had gone out for referendum. We had been approved, and the project is funded for $1.8 million. The Public Building Commission recommends the approval of the final design and authorizes bidding for the construction of the locker room and HVAC improvements at the police station. The scope of the project is to upgrade the locker rooms in the building and address existing moisture issues with HVAC upgrades and to improve air quality in the facility. The design professional estimates the cost of this construction will be $1.4 million and is anticipated to occur. Construction is anticipated to occur for 8 to 10 months, beginning in the summer of 2021.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veliver. Any other questions or comments from members of the council?
Is this anything that George or Sean needs to? Is there anything additional you guys need to comment on?
I would defer
I think,
to George. Yep, go ahead, George.
From my end, you nailed it, Mr. Veliver. I couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. I read your memo. It was very good. So.
Well, and the good news is, obviously, this is a project I think we're all enthusiastic to advance on behalf of the Cheshire Police Department, but certainly from an economic perspective, as you said, Mr. Veliver, we've got a little more than $1.7 million remaining in our appropriation, and the estimate is $1.4 million. So it'd be great if we can actually take advantage of that $1.4 million estimate and get the project done under budget. So, George, pressure's on you, buddy.
We won't tell any of the bidders how much we have. That'll be the secret.
But isn't that a little bit of a problem? We go ahead and approve all these things and we publicize how much money we have available. I mean, it's a little bit kind of contrary to the whole process, isn't it?
It's the first rule of construction, right? Don't tell them how much you have.
Don't show your cards. You got that right. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9J, discussion of possible action regarding the hiring the design professional for the Cheshire High School HVAC capital project. Mr. Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution 051121-12. Be it resolved, the Town Council approves the award of contract to Consulting Engineering Services for the design, bidding, and construction administration of HVAC improvements at Cheshire High School for $29,500 pursuant to the recommendation of the Public Building Commission.
Second.
Welcome. Mr. Jinks.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Mr. Slocum.
There were 3 bids submitted for this service, and this is the lowest bidder as it turns out. The bottom line is this project will address the HVAC and control system for 10 classrooms at Cheshire High, which have air conditioning. They all don't. And the scope of the work will involve a comprehensive review of the existing system. And that's about it, other than the memo stating that there is an existing balance of just under $310,000 in the budget. I don't know where that leaves the budget. We can leave that for the professionals that joined us this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Massiano, while you're here, anything you want to add to this since it is a school item?
Yes, this project, just to be clear, would be worked on over the next 7 or 8 months and going out to bid. So this would be work that would be done next summer, most likely. So the engagement of a design professional is important because of the scope of the HVAC. And there are several different HVAC systems that will be included, in the scope of this work. Is the $310,000 enough? I certainly hope so. I think we can make it work within that budget, but that's the idea of hiring the design professional to get work started.
Thank you, Mr. Massiano. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 9K, discussion and possible action regarding approval of management specialist, assistant town engineer, and economic development coordinator / grant writer job descriptions. Ms. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 051121-13. Be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Personnel Committee, the town council approves the following job descriptions as presented and attached. Management specialist, new; assistant town engineer, amended; economic development coordinator, grant writer, amended.
Second.
Ms. Nichols, second. Mr. Talbot. Thank you. Ms. Nichols.
Yes, the Personnel Committee was asked by Mr. Kimball, Town Manager, to review these requested job changes in the administration of the town offices, and I'm going to let him opine a little bit more on the details of it. But the Personnel Committee felt that after listening to his request, that the cost difference would be not significant, and it would result in a much more efficient operation within the town manager's office and the Public Works Department. And we felt that it was a reasonable way to improve the operation of those departments and to make people more efficient. So Sean, I will let you tell us what you might highlight as being the most significant aspects of those job changes.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. I will lead with the management specialist and the economic development coordinator, and then I'll ask George to chime in a little bit on the assistant town engineer. But for all 3 of these positions, these are all proposed as stated in the budget that is before the council right now. Again, we haven't finalized and adopted that budget. We are looking for these approvals with the understanding, of course, that we wouldn't advertise or fill if for some reason these positions weren't funded, but currently they appear to be on track to be funded in the upcoming budget. But we do want to move on these because these will all be vacant, either are currently vacant or will be vacant as of July 1st. And so given the tighter time frame, these are some really key positions that we want to get some good people in here. So I'll start with the management specialist position. That's a new position with the reorg of my office, the town manager's office. This is really it's sort of a reimagining of the traditional administrative assistant position and kind of an evolution into a much more high level supportive administrative and analytical position. So somebody who possibly is more on a career track to possibly municipal management in the future. But somebody who would, with the evolving needs of our office, specifically myself and Arnett, able to handle a lot of our own administrative, letter writing and emails and scheduling and things like that, that there's really an opportunity here for a more advanced position and someone that we see probably, as you see in the requirements, has either received their master's in public administration or have a bachelor's and are on their way to maybe pursuing a master's in public administration or a related field. But again, I think the job description speaks for itself. I've seen this model work really well in another community that I'm familiar with, and we're really excited about this opportunity, and conditions are such that we can make this change in this office. I think now, and this is something I've been looking to do for a couple of years. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to get some great response to this, and it's going to be a big help for the town. So again, there's a lot in the job description. I don't know if there's anything else I left out, but I'd also let Arnett chime in if there's anything else that you think I should highlight. No.
No, I think you said it all, Sean.
All right. So
Kimball, thank you, Mr.
if
Talbot.
you-
Sorry, Sean.
Oh, no problems. I guess I'll go ahead and speak to the economic development coordinator position too. That'll be brief, and then maybe we'll take questions on all three at the end. So again, this position with the upcoming retirement of Jerry Sicko was an opportunity to just take another look at that job description that's really evolved over time with Jerry's skill set. He's going to be a very difficult person to replace. Really, what I've done here is just proposed the addition of some grant writing responsibility. Really, that's kind of codifying what Jerry already helps with, but really as an additional resource, I see this next person helping out other departments, looking for grant opportunities, maybe assisting, where they can with applications or being a primary point of contact for grant applications. Again, with specific public works or other, very technical applications that may not always be appropriate, but I see this as a support for the other departments who are, we're always looking for grant funding to help offset and save tax dollars locally. And we've been very successful with that. So I'm optimistic. And I think that this position, the economic development coordinator, will have the capacity to add that kind of within their job description. And again, it's consistent with what Jerry's often done for us, as you've seen with Ball and Socket and other major grant applications. So that's the primary change you'll see in there. A few other small changes, actually a good suggestion by Mr. Walsh from our Personnel Committee to add specifically working with the Cheshire Chamber of Commerce on initiatives. So I did make that update per that suggestion out of our committee. And then again, kind of an important one at the very end, as needed, assist with special projects involving municipal or significant community-wide events. As everyone knows, that's really been something that Jerry has done well. It's kind of a jack of all trades, a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, as we sometimes call him. He's led our 325th anniversary celebration or other big projects. And I think having that now also, and I should have mentioned, incorporated into my office as we move HR out of this function, I think is really important, because we're going to have an opportunity here to have this person supporting a lot of our townwide initiatives and really plugged into what we're doing in this office on behalf of the council. So those are my two positions. And then maybe, unless there's any questions on those immediately, I could go to George on the assistant town engineer.
Thank you, Sean. Questions on that item from members of the council? No, Sean?
Okay, I guess I'll turn it to George. You want to give a quick summary on the assistant town engineer edits?
Sure thing. Just to take the council through a quick bit of history. Last year, our town engineer, Walter Gankars, retired. The council decided to pursue a consulting town engineer option, which we've been doing for the last 7 or 8 months now. Kind of unexpectedly, Don Nolte, who is our engineering operations manager, is retiring in June. So we are kind of critically short in the engineering field right now. And we need to rebuild that division. Sensing from the budget discussions that we've had that the council wants to still pursue the consulting town engineer option for at least another year or so. It makes sense at this point to hire an assistant town engineer, which allows us to do more work in-house than we currently can. It'll give us a professional engineer on staff, which is always desirable. And the changes we made were just generally to freshen up the job description from many years ago when it was first written. It also it envisions a consulting town engineer arrangement for the next year or more, as long as the council wishes to pursue that. So it gives that person some more duties that an in-house person might have over a consulting engineer, but very just freshening up more than anything. I would say nothing earth-shaking in that job description.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nawat. Any questions or comments from members of the council? Yes, Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, George, I have a question for you as far as the town engineer position goes. So, we've talked before about how Walt was really great at getting us a lot of grant dollars over the years. And I guess I'm wondering, is this position envisioning that the assistant town engineer is being able to kind of do that? I'm not really reading it. Or is the job description for the economic development coordinator sort of crossing over into that category for the assistant town engineer?
Good question. As Sean said, that we work with Jerry a lot for grants and other things. He's been instrumental in helping us apply and pursue things. With one person, one kind of office person, if you will, on staff in the engineering side, it makes it a little more difficult to get some of the wider ranging grants. A lot of the bridge grants and things like that are pretty much gimmies. You apply to the state and there's a procedure already set up for that. But it's these kind of ones that come out of left field sometimes for sidewalk connectivity or trail kind of upgrades, links to the trail and things, kind of like Jarvis Street, the ones we picked up on to do that sidewalk up the hill on Jarvis. Those are the ones that take a little bit of ferreting out and being involved, going to some COG meetings and things like that, finding out where the funds are, and that person can certainly do it without a doubt. It's just we with more people, you can put more eyes on those sorts of things and try to get in line quicker than not. So that's the best answer I think I can give you.
Okay, so you are envisioning the assistant town engineer position to be someone that can go out and get grant dollars for us then?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks and Mr. Nawat. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? No? With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 9L, excuse me, which is discussion of the ARP fund eligible uses. We did put this on in the event that we had an opportunity to update the council and the public on the ability of us to be able to use some of this federal ARP money that we're getting relative to the COVID pandemic. With that, I guess I'll turn it over to our budget chair, Mr. Borrowy, and our town manager, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did discuss this earlier, and in relation to the very fruitful, productive budget workshop meeting we had last Thursday, the town manager sent out on Friday an update to the mill rate calculator, taking into consideration some of the items that we talked about, so that this Thursday we could have a further discussion. With regard to that, we did have some significant plans to use some of the funds from the American Rescue Plan. And yesterday we were all sent from the town manager guidance and actually the rules that were promulgated and set up that are still not very clear. That we still have some more clarification to get, and then Sean will talk more about that. But at the moment, we're kind of in a holding pattern as to what we can do and what we can't do to mitigate a possible mill rate increase by using some of the funds for whatever purposes that we were hoping would be in alignment with the ARP rules. And we just need further clarification, as we learned earlier this evening. But I'll hand it over to Sean for more details than I just gave.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Borrowy. Yeah, we did review, and as you said yesterday, the ARP guidance came out around, I think, 2:00 in the afternoon. The official, what they call final note, I think, is about 150-page document. So there's a lot of detail of different guidance and eligible use considerations. There are also FAQ and summary documents that we've certainly looked through, and I know Jim and his staff have been going through the master document as well to try to pick out things that appear to to be relevant to the discussion we're having. One key point that Jim picked up on as we discussed this morning was a statement that the guidance fundamentally applies to the entitlement cities, and that for non-entitlement towns like us under 50,000 population, that further guidance will be coming next week as those funds flow through the state, and presumably they'll be giving guidance either to the state as to how they should set up their own guidance, or maybe some latitude for the state to do so. So that was a little bit of it was a surprise for me, first of all, but I think, that's just another delay kind of when we don't really have the luxury of additional time here. And again, I don't think there was a date certain, but I think it said just next week, correct, Jim, when we looked at that today?
Yep.
So that's one piece that's worth noting. So nothing is final. And I'd be a little hesitant to say definitively that anything is that we've been discussing is either approved or not at this point. There were a few items that are certainly some of our major considerations that I think there was language that if you interpreted it one way could say, that's really not encouraged, or this other area you probably could. As Mr. Barrow just said, it's unfortunately a little more muddy than we would like it to be when you're waiting for clear guidance after 60 days. I was on a call with fellow towns and cities this morning, about 80 of us from about 9 a.m. to 11 this morning with CCM, and it was a business meeting to discuss other items and state legislative proposals that we're all watching. But there was some discussion of this in general sense that there is similar frustration and confusion about what exactly is eligible going forward, and concern about relying on something that then you get told after the fact is not eligible. So I think there's going to be more. I hope between now and Thursday, we expect to have a little more clarity for you. Hopefully we can get some interpretations or bounce some ideas off of CCM to possibly pass to Treasury. But you can imagine, I mean, some of the initial webinars that they're planning for this aren't for another week and a half or 2 or 3 weeks away. So it's not going to really help with our timeline. So we're going to do everything we can to get more answers in advance of Thursday. And Jim, I don't know if you had anything else that I didn't touch on there.
No, other than I just confirmed that it says further guidance on distributions to non-entitlement units next week. Just
yeah. So there you go.
Mr. Barwi.
Yeah, I do want to make one more statement because I get two daily newspapers, and I continue to read about towns that have adopted their budgets. And I continue to read how some of them most of them are using significant amounts of ARP funds that they expect to have, or fund balance funds that they expect to be replenished with ARP. And quite frankly, I just want it known that I think that's a risk. I think that's a big risk that they're taking without having more clarification. We'll have more clarification. We have a little bit more now. We'll have more next week. And I think we would have been remiss had we not extended our deadline to give us till the end of this month. Town manager is going to look at the possibility of maybe extending it a little bit more. I'm not sure if we have that option or not, but I want all options on the table so we all know what we can do to make sure that we make the right decision. But I really want people to know that the towns that have already adopted are taking quite a risk, and I would rather know what we're doing as best as possible, and I think we're doing this judiciously and carefully.
And thank you, Mr. Barwi, for that. I certainly agree with that comment. And the other issue is that, the downside of using a one-time infusion of dollars for ongoing operating expenses creates a big cliff for your next year's budget. And so, that is something that this council is very concerned about, making sure that we judiciously use these proceeds that we're getting from the federal government for this COVID reimbursement. And just for the community's edification, which, we've been saying in our budget meetings, but we'll say it here, we are looking to get close to $8.5 million on the town side, is my understanding. Correct, Mr. Kimball? And those dollars can be used over a 3-year time frame. It's also my understanding, and I see Mr. Massiana is still here, that the Board of Ed will be getting about $857,000. Mr. Massiana, is that correct?
From the ARP funding, and
Correct, on the ARP funding.
240,000.
Yes, correct. So thank you. So, it is a nice infusion, but as always, this council is going to be very deliberate and cautious as to how we use it. And to your point, Mr. Barr, we want to make sure we're complying with the regulations as to where and how we use it. And also making sure that we're not just using a huge chunk of one-time proceeds and creating a big hole for our operating budget in the coming years, which would really be a big impact on the backs of our taxpayers. So, that's the deliberation that we're going through in this current budget process. We're going to continue it tomorrow night, and I'm confident at the end of the day, we'll have a very appropriate balance of the use of those dollars to benefit our community. So thank you, Mr. Barrow, for mentioning that.
Just quickly, tomorrow night or Thursday night?
Or my apologies, Thursday night.
Just want to make sure I didn't get my nights wrong. Thank you.
I'm being forward-looking. I was hoping we were
Yes.
Wednesday already.
It's not past midnight yet, so we're not hopefully going to be here that late.
We're not going to get to midnight. No, thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, so there is no vote to be taken here. Just an update. Mr. Kimball, anything further you'd like to add?
Nope, I think that's it on this item.
Great. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll move on to item 10, which is our town manager report and communications. Back to you, Town Manager Kimball.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll be pretty brief here. Let me just share my screen and walk through a few items. Again, I know Maura presented early on, so I'll kind of breeze through the COVID update. But I did just want to point out in some of the graphs that I maintain here in this office, some, I think, continued positive news, and I hope it's a trend that we can continue to see. As you'll see, our moving 14-day average of new cases in these last month, which kind of starts around here, are trending downward in the last month. We're currently at 14.4 daily cases per 100,000 population, which again is that's what's moved us out of the red and into the orange, as Maura mentioned before, and as you'd see in the map of Connecticut here, red being at 15 or higher. Also, something I don't think she mentioned, but our local positivity rate, which is calculated based in the last 7 days, how many positive tests out of the number of tests, ours is at 1%, which is a really great number. That's the lowest I think I've seen it in months. That's 28 positive cases over the last 7 days out of 2,923 tests. So from positivity rate, which I know the state reports, that's a good thing to see. And you'll see that kind of graphed here in the blue chart and the red trend line, but we are really in a much better spot, really similar to before the fall of last year. Again, I won't touch on this. Maura mentioned the vaccine clinics upcoming for this weekend, and also Cheshire's vaccination rate at about 63% of all ages who have received at least one dose of the vaccine. A few quick updates on town services. Our Human Services Department is still doing counseling virtually, as are many support and information programs, but social services assistance programs are accessible in person, as is, of course, crisis intervention. The Senior Center is open to visitors now, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. with some restrictions, and they are offering grab-and-go lunches, one-on-one curbside assistance, and programs on Zoom or outdoors. Transportation is fully operational, and the Yellow House is gearing up for more outdoor programming in the summer with a large tent and is continuing virtual programming. The library will be open regular hours to visitors beginning in July. Currently, the library is open to the public the following hours: Monday and Wednesday, 1 to 7, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 10 to 1. Grab and go program with pickup hours Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 1 continues to be very popular. Staff will continue virtual programming for programs, and we'll be adding some tables and chairs for planning enhanced cleaning in preparation for slowly beginning in-person programming. They are also working in conjunction with Recreation for some outdoor summer programs this year. Building Department has been conducting exterior and non-living area inspections throughout the pandemic, but is now transitioning to fully in-person inspections in-home for those applicants who are comfortable with inspectors entering their living spaces. Photo inspections will continue to be offered for a period of time, and the volume of permits continues to be much higher than usual. Again, I mentioned a little above, but the Senior Center Elderly Nutrition Program, just a reminder, as I mentioned last month, this is returned to the Cheshire Senior Center. It's a great opportunity. Grab-and-go lunches are available with a suggested donation of $3 every Tuesday and Friday, 11 a.m. to 11:30. This is available to all Cheshire residents age 60 and over. For more details, contact the Senior Center or click on the link. Congratulations to Lieutenant Mike Durkee. Last week on May 6th, he successfully graduated from the Administrative Officers course at the Southern Police Institute at the University of Louisville. This is a highly regarded and intensive 12-week advanced police management course designed to develop informed, effective, ethically, and technically competent law enforcement managers. We congratulate Mike on the successful completion of the prestigious program. And a few upgrades in a nice picture here. Kudos to the Public Works Department, led by George Nowotny, and also support of Recreation Director John Golick, as a variety of improvements have been made or are being made this month in town parks this season. And ultimate credit again to the town council for the forethought and capital investment of approval for the parks upgrades about 2 years ago. Notable recent projects include the full restoration of the beach sand at Mixville, which should be done later this month. Mixville Court basketball court rehabilitation at Mixville Park with new paint to match the other 3 courts that we fully reconstructed last year. New gatehouse at the entry to Mixville with electricity and Wi-Fi for mobile payments. New Mixville sign and new orientation is being completed by an Eagle Scout. The new gazebo at the Cheshire Dog Park was replaced following the one that was damaged by the wind last year. And new ADA accessible swing just last week was installed at Cheshire Park Playground following a resident's request. New temporary outfield fence was purchased for MAC 4, and full turf and infield rehabilitation of the McNamara Diamond Fields and dugout improvements. And if you haven't had a chance to get down there to look, it really looks unbelievable. There's a picture from when I went down there on opening day, but the line, the infields are cut beautifully. The grass looks incredible. Public Works and Championship Turf did an amazing job, and I know all the users of McNamara have been extremely, extremely happy. So if you get a chance to stop by, it's really nice to see. Just a few reminders: grass clippings and leaf disposal every Monday morning until November from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 at the old transfer station, 1304 Waterbury Road. And household hazardous waste for run by RWA opens Saturday, May 22nd. Pre-registration is required, and the link is available here. And just a couple of upcoming meetings, but I know we're going to have more. Budget workshop this Thursday, May 13th. Also, I know we have May 25th on the calendar as well, and I'm sure a few others. And then our next regular council meeting is scheduled for June 8th. And that will conclude my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimball. There are questions or comments for Sean on his report? Yes, Ms. Nichols. You're muted, Ms. Nichols. Ms. Nichols, you're muted.
You're muted, Sylvia.
Turn it off so my dogs won't bother you. I just want to say there were an awful lot of positive things in that report, a lot of good things happening in town, a lot of resident involvement, a lot of great work by Parks and Recs and Public Works, and spring is here and it's looking great. So just love it.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would just want to underscore the congratulations for Lieutenant Durkee. I know that is a very prestigious program. It's an arduous process. It's a 12-week process. He was away from his family for, I think, most of those 12 weeks. So it's a big commitment, and I want to commend him and certainly Cheshire Police Department for their commitment to further training for officers. Obviously, in this day and age, it's critically important that we support our officers and that we make sure they are as well trained as they possibly can be. And Lieutenant Durkee embodies, the commitment to ensure that he's getting the best training he possibly can to serve our community. So kudos to him and all of the Cheshire Police Department who helped participate in this. So thank you, Sean, for bringing that up. And obviously, Sylvia, I agree with you. Park and Rec and Public Works, those guys have been just killing it with a lot of the improvements. The good news is the community gave them the money to do it. But the execution is critical, and they've been executing extremely well. So George, kudos to you and your staff on both sides, Public Works and Park and Rec. Everything looks phenomenal. I'm glad we're supporting those targeted investments that we agreed to commit to in this community. I think the public sees it, recognizes it, and are really enjoying it. So I agree with you, Sylvia. It's great. So thanks to everyone who played a part in that. If there are no other questions or comments on the town manager report and communications, we'll move on to item 11, which is reports of committees of the council and chairman's report. I'll start with Mr. Slocum. Tim, Mr. Slocum? Chairman's report?
And I knew that. I just was pulling a Sylvia just to get the monkey off her back.
Trying to just
I
use
gave
the-
my
I'm keeping
report,
the
you just
dogs
didn't
away
hear
because
it.
I could
Yeah.
use that excuse too. I got a few dogs too.
No, I have no report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Miss Nichols?
Just that personnel has been pretty busy. We're still working on some training at the end of the summer. But other than that, audit is done, so we're good.
Thank you, Miss Nichols. Mr. Borwe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've all been part of the budget workshop, so you know what we've been doing.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Borwe. Mr. Veliver?
Thank you. The Ordinance Review Committee had a meeting the other week, very successful first meeting with the Attorney D'Onofrio. Thank you. We had 4 items on the agenda, including a discussion of the possible blight ordinance, as well as discussions on the PBC ordinance, the changes to the Park and Rec Commission to sort of make some changes to their regulations, as well as also discussion on a possible discussion on veterans tax exemption. So it was a successful meeting, and I think Attorney D'Onofrio, welcome aboard. I think it was good and productive, and we look forward to working with you on those agenda items.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Ms. Pavano?
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Mr. Walsh?
Thank you. Solid Waste met last week, and as we had discussed about the bulky trash pickup, we are hoping that we will be able to use some of the ARP funds to do that this fall. Once we have better ideas of how we can use those funds, we will meet again and hopefully present something to the council in the coming months.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I think that's it for Chairman's report. I don't think I missed anybody. And if so, we'll move on to item 12, miscellaneous and appointments, liaison reports. Ms. Nichols?
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum?
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
No report.
Ms. Pavano?
No report.
Thank you. Mr. Borwe?
No report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Talbot?
I'll be consistent. No report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jinks?
I guess no report tonight.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Appointments to the boards and commissions. Ms. Nichols, do we have any?
We do not, but I would just like to make a plea to the thousands of people that are watching this committee meeting. We are coming up to a time where COVID has changed people's routines a little bit, and we're going to be finding the need to fill some of the committees and commissions that are there. We really would like to encourage people to volunteer. This Council of 9 has become a family that meets very, very often, and we would appreciate your help to take some of the burden off of the committees and the commissions. You all are talented and you all have things to offer, and we promise you it won't be as many meetings as we have. So if you have any interest, contact any one of us as town councilors. We will send you to the appropriate place to volunteer. And we hope that you will consider being part of a group of people that are really committed to keeping the services going in Cheshire at a reasonable price. We need help. So I just urge all of you to consider giving us a little of your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nichols, and I certainly agree with you wholeheartedly. So thank you for bringing that up. Mr. Talbot, do you have any appointments to boards and commissions?
I do not.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, we will move on to item 13, which is our town attorney report and communications. Attorney D'Onofrio?
No report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to item 14, council communications, letters to the councils. Any members of the council have any letters they'd like to share? Seeing none. I do have, if you just bear with me, I thought that I had something, but I don't think I do. So if I did miss it, I'll make sure I get it on to the next meeting. So my apologies on that. There is no miscellaneous. So with that, we're going to go back to items for executive session. I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss labor negotiations, pending litigation, land acquisition, and economic incentives, to include our town manager, our assistant town manager, our town attorney. And Sean, is there anyone else that needs to come into this?
There will be. Yep, there's a list. It's Attorney Vocchio, Attorney Dugas, Chief Drive, Lou Zullo, Jerry Sitko, Bill Volker, George Nowotny.
Wow, quite a list tonight. Illustrious group. Thank you. So I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to include all those individuals. Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Is there a second?
Second.
I think that was Mr. Walsh. Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, it is
And-
unanimous. We are now going into executive session. Is my understanding we will be logging off and re-logging in on an executive session login. Is that correct, Ms. Talbot?
That's correct. And there'll be no action after. So we'll be just concluding the meeting.
Sounds good. So thank you all to the public who are here and watching tonight. Good night to you all, and I'll see the rest.